Hello and welcome to this Retfurb video. On this video we have a pair of early 1980s Technics SB-3030 loudspeakers. We're going to be testing their working condition, stripping them down and giving them an overhaul. As you can see currently they aren't in a very good state, so without delay let's get to the video. So straight away with this I'm just going to do a quick basic test to see whether all the speakers are working correctly. The first unit seems okay, all the speakers have got sound coming out of them. The second unit, however, the middle speaker doesn't have any sound coming out of it, so I'm just going to do a quick test on that. There shouldn't be an open circuit on this, there should be some resistance but not an open circuit, so we'll do a quick test and see how that comes out. So you can see from that test that there's an open circuit on this speaker, so there's some sort of issue inside. The problem is with it, it's all sealed at the back so you can't actually get access to check it. There might be a way of doing it, and if someone does know, please do let me know, because that will help me in the future if ever I do any other speaker repairs. But in this case I'm going to see if I can find some working used items. Hopefully it will give it a better result at the end. You can see here I'm now working on the large speaker at the bottom of the unit. So the first thing I need to do is remove this trim, which is just glued down, and then I'm going to look at removing the old foam and then replacing it with a new one. So unfortunately on this video there's going to be some missing bits on it, because for some reason I've had issues with my clips not saving properly, or I've deleted them. I don't know why. I've had this one and the last video I did, part of it went missing. Now I did have a problem. I was transferring some files over from my laptop to my PC, and I think I might have somehow managed to delete them in the process. So there's a few bits missing out on it. Unfortunately there's the bit where I did the capacitor change, which was just a single capacitor in each of the crossovers on the speakers, so that was actually replaced, but for some reason I haven't got that on here now, so you won't see that. And also the bit where I recolored the trims on these lower speakers, I just gave them another coat of silver just to tidy them up, so again that's missing. But you'll see the process as it's going on, just with these couple of little bits missing. So back to the video, you can see that I've just cleaned up all the old foam, removed all that, taken the trim off, and now I can just try on the new foam piece just to make sure that it fits okay. And as you can see, it's pretty much perfect fit. Now it won't fit on exactly how the last one did, it'll actually sit on top of the cone rather than underneath it, if that makes sense. But you know, it looks a lot better than what the foam did before, and it will serve its purpose a lot better than what the foam did before. So what I did here for gluing this on is I just sprayed some spray adhesive into the cap, and now I'm using the end of the brush, the opposite end of where the brush part is, and I'm just putting that round onto the actual foam itself, and then I'm going to put some onto the speaker, and then this will give a good bond and hold it to the main shell of the speaker and also the cone. The reason I did it this way rather than spraying it directly onto the parts, when you're spraying it on, unless you mask everything up, you're going to get a mess. So I thought this way it controls it a little bit better putting it on. I'm using the end of the brush rather than the actual brush part, purely because I don't want to ruin the brush part. That can be used for something else again, so you can do it this way fine. It produces a lot less mess doing it this way. Now you could use a different glue, but I always find this sort of glue is ideal for this purpose. Here I'm just carefully fitting the foam down and just making sure that it's bonding correctly, fitting it to the actual shell of the speaker and the cone itself, just making sure that it's central. You obviously don't want it off to one side. Just working my way all the way around, just putting pressure. Now I've put the two pieces of plastic underneath the cone just to support it so it's not moving around too much whilst I do this. And then when it's stuck down you can obviously remove those plastic bags out of the way just so you can continue and fit it down correctly. At this stage you can see that this speaker looks really good now. Obviously the cone itself has got a lot of fading and it's got some what looks like water damage on it or something like that. You can just see staining on there, so we'll address that shortly. First thing to do is put the trim back on around the speaker, and this just needs to be glued down exactly the same as how you've just done that foam. It doesn't matter if this glue gets on the sides of this trim a little bit, you can just wipe that off after with a suitable solvent degreaser, just something mild enough that will just clean the glue off and not damage anything else. And here I'm just applying some pressure around the edges just to make sure that it gets a good bond back onto the speaker. As mentioned before, I'm just going around the trim now, just going over it with a bit of solvent based degreaser, the same thing that car body shops use just to clean the panels before paintwork. So this is just mild enough that you'll get rid of the adhesive and you won't damage anything else. And now that's all completed, I'm now going to apply some fabric dye to the cones, which should bring back the colour and make them look a bit more uniform. Now I don't expect them to look brand new with this, but I think if I put 2 or 3 coats in it, it'll just give them more of a presentable finish to them. So that was one full coat that I did there, and then now onto the second coat, which you can see straight away it looks better. I probably will give it a 3rd coat, but I'm not going to do it all at once. I don't want to put too much wetness onto the cone itself. Looking at this now, let's just transform this speaker from what it was before to faded with the damaged foam. It just looks so much better. Now going back slightly in time, because you'll see the speaker is actually still damaged on this unit, I'm now going to remove the top speaker and the lower speaker out of this box, and then we can look at refurbing this box and hopefully making it look a lot more presentable than what it does currently. Now there's a lot of splitting around the edges of the wood, the front is damaged, all the wood around the sides, the veneer finish around the sides is all damaged, so I'm hoping that I can try and replicate that as good as I can and make it look a lot more like it should have done originally. Firstly, I'm just going to go around with a blade and just remove any of the loose bits all around the surfaces. I'm then going to sand it down, and then I'm going to put some resin into the joints and then put some body filler around the corners, and then I can sand it all down and try and get the shape back. Now the whole idea behind this refurb is trying to reuse everything I can, so all the original wood speakers as much as possible. Obviously if there's a part which has to be replaced, like the mid on one of the boxes, then I'm going to do that. But I like to try and repair and refurb as much as possible on the original components. Now I could build a new box and it could be like brand new, but I don't want to do that. I want to try and restore what we've got here. Obviously you could just chuck stuff away and it just goes into landfill, but if we can try and save stuff, you know, it goes on for a lot longer, it saves replacing and just with new all the time. So that's the main aim for this speaker system. Now moving back to the actual refurb, so now I've sanded it all down, I've got the shape back, and now I'm going to apply some textured paint to the main front surface. I'm also going to spray some of the black texture just around the edges, just so when I fit the film there's no white showing through. When you apply this texture coating, it's best not to put it on too heavy, it's best to just build out of light coats. Now what I like to do is I spray it on quite often, I'll dry it off with a heat gun, but as I'm doing it I'll rub over it with my hand slightly, which just takes the roughness off of it. You obviously don't want to rub over it when it's wet, you just need it to be soft still when you do that. So now that we've done that part, we can now look at putting the wood effect on. So I've got some sticky back vinyl which has got the wood effect on it, which I've tried to replicate as best as possible to the original finish. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to overlap on the sides, so the top part is going to hang down over slightly by about 4mm, and then I'm going to butt it up against it with the side piece and then wrap that round underneath slightly, the same as on the side, so it's sort of got a bit of an overlap underneath as well, but you obviously won't see that, and that's the best way as I can think of doing this without showing any edges. Now whilst I do this part, there's another part of the video which I realised that I was missing when I got to this part, which is the actual fit up of the speaker, so putting all the speakers back into the unit. So unfortunately you don't actually see me putting it all back together, you'll just see me after this testing the unit, which is a shame really. I've obviously missed out a few bits in this video which should have been on there, and if I hadn't deleted them then they would be. you'll see that I'm just trimming the film, making sure it's the correct size before fitting it on there. And then once I lay it on, I can then trim it on the actual box itself, which is just mainly the rear edge. I just go down with the metal ruler and the blade and just carefully trim that off. What I would say when you're using this vinyl is to make sure that the surface you're going on is as clean as possible and there's no bumps or anything on it. You can just run over it with just a piece of sandpaper if you feel like there's any rough bits. Obviously it will hide a certain amount, and wood is designed to be, I'd say designed, wood is sort of uneven on times, so you will get a little bit of variation, and that's not going to hurt. It's not going to show too much through this effect as long as there's no massively raised bumps on there. So yeah, just to do that, that'll then give it a good surface to go on. Obviously the more textured or bumpy it is, the worse it'll fit. It just won't stick down so well. So that's one thing to bear in mind when you're doing it. Now I'm just using a squeegee tool just to go around and push it down. The bond will bond better on this when it's left for a period of time. Straight away you'll find that when you're fitting it on, that it can be positioned up and down fairly easily. Obviously you don't want to keep lifting it. You run the risk of lifting off any coating then, and then it'll stick to the adhesive, and then that part will be no good then. So you will have a little bit of movement with it, but it's more trial and error. If you've not used it before, you're probably better off trying it on a scrap piece of wood with maybe some of the black on there and a scrap piece of film. You can just try and see how it moves around and how it will stick down. So now I'm getting close to finishing this wood effect on the box. Now I'm obviously not going to show you doing it on both the boxes, but in a minute when you see it set up against the stereo, when I do a demo of it, now obviously the sound you're not going to know exactly because you're hearing it through whatever speakers you're listening to it on, but just to demo it all working correctly and just seeing it in situation, you'll see just how good it looks. Obviously there are better ways of doing this. Like I said before, you could replace all the box, you could do proper veneer, but how much that's going to cost I don't know. And not saying that the speakers aren't worth it, but the whole idea is trying to refurb them, reuse them again, and keep the cost down for people. You know, not everyone can afford to spend hundreds of pounds on speakers. They want to keep what they've got and look after it, and hopefully then it can go on for years to come again. So now I'm going to set the speakers up with my old 1970s Sony system, and then you can just hear them in situation and just see what they look like up against this old classic stereo. So you can see from the demonstration and the speakers up against the unit and in situ just how great they look. Now for the process that was involved in doing it, obviously we didn't go too in depth, but I think they look really good. They're exactly how I thought they would turn out. Now there are some marks on them still, they're not 100% perfect, but for a refurb and tidying them up and making them look presentable again, they're absolutely perfect. So to give a ballpark figure of what the cost was to do it, I actually had the filler, the texture spray and the dye already, so I probably only used a small amount of all of it. Even if you said £4 to cover all those bits, I would have thought that'd be plenty. The speaker foam was £8. The two replacement mids were £20 used. The capacitors inside the unit were £3, and it was £5 for the wood effect vinyl. As always, thank you for taking the time to watch the video. It's really appreciated. I hope you enjoyed it. Please like and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next one.